Hello, my name is Jared Ludlow, the Publications Director at the BYU Religious Study Center, your weekly resource for gospel scholarship. Today we'll talk about some resources related to the reading for February 7th through 13th, Genesis 12 through 17, and Abraham 1 to 2. Here, of course, it talks a lot about Abraham and his ministry, and specifically his covenant with God. And so the first article is called The Abrahamic Covenant. It's by Michael Goodman, a professor in the Church History and Doctrine Department here at BYU. And this is an article that appeared in the Religious Educator. And here he talks about how the Abrahamic Covenant really is a foundational theme of the Old Testament. In fact, it provides a framework for it. And so he talks about the importance of covenants. God's part of the covenants, Abraham's part of the covenant, and then how covenants apply here in the restored gospel, and so how they can apply to us. There's also another article called The Covenant of Abraham by Mont Nyman, who used to be a professor here in the religion department. And this comes from a volume on the Pearl of Great Price. And he specifically starts off talking about how the covenant of Abraham was reinstituted at the Kirtland Temple on April 3rd, 1836. And he, within his article, talks about 4 specific promises related to the Abrahamic Covenant and how Abraham can be an example to us of one who passed tests that were given to him. We also have an article or piece called The Wife-Sister Experience by Gay Strathern, who is in the Ancient Scripture Department here at BYU. And this comes from a Sperry Symposium presentation and volume. And in this, she examines the story of Abraham and Sarah, and specifically this somewhat challenging story of them going into Egypt and Abraham claiming that Sarah was his sister and not mentioning initially that she was his wife. And so she explores that story and some of the challenges that come with it, and then talks about why maybe Abraham called her his sister. And she compares some accounts from the Genesis Apocryphon, a text that was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. And then she also talks about the effect that this experience might have had with the Egyptians and on the Egyptians, and particularly about healing and laying on of hands. Another piece is called Reexamining Lot. It's by Roseanne Benson, who's taught in the religion faculty as an adjunct faculty member. And this is from the Religious Educator. And Lot, of course, can be a conflicting character in the Old Testament. But she starts off looking at 2 Peter's account that he was a righteous person, a preacher of righteousness. And so she then tries to examine, well, where's the evidence for this? Because we often look at Lot's story as an example of one who got carried away with the worldly things and didn't turn towards God soon enough. And so she examines different accounts of Lot, both from canonical and non-canonical sources. She reviews major episodes in Lot's life. And then she tries to draw some lessons that we can learn from Lot. So I think it gives us a much better understanding of this figure and his account in the Old Testament. And finally, there's one called Cutting Covenants. It's by Jared Parker. It comes from a Sperry Symposium. Jared, I believe, is in the medical field, but his father was a religion faculty member here, Todd Parker. And he talks about how this particular phrase, cutting covenant, comes from a specific Hebrew phrase, karat berit, which is used a lot for making a covenant. And there's many examples in the Old Testament of actual cutting associated with covenants. Think of all the animal sacrifices. Specifically, he examines the story of Abraham where they're cutting animals in half, and then Abraham walks through them, and then the presence of God walks through them. Circumcision could be viewed also as an example of this type of cutting for a covenant. And so he goes through all these ancient examples and then tries to see what application they might have to us today as we make covenants.